You're listening to the Fezcast, produced on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and featuring the independent thoughts, rants and rambles of Saracens fans and special guests. If you'd like your opinion to be heard on the show, you can find the Fezcast on Facebook or Fezcast_SSA on Instagram and whatever Twitter is known as these days. But for now, enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 34 of season 4 of the Fezcast. And well, normally it's me and Barry who described as Stadler and Waldorf, but I'm joined today by our next variation of those two, Matt and Duncan, because I think you guys have got a little bit, without going into too many details right now, because we'll do that in a little while. But yeah, you were both at the StoneX yesterday and you got a bit of a whinge about the last quarter of an hour, haven't you?
Oh, I'm not going to whinge too much. I'd just like to say that this is the A team, by the way. And it's such a shame that this isn't a video podcast because I'll let you two into the secret. We're recording at 9:30 on Sunday morning and I'm in my Saracens pyjamas.
Oh, wow. I've got my Tiki Tonga t-shirt on. So, Brad, if you're listening in, I fancy another pack of your decent roast. And what's Matt in? If it's an Arsenal shirt, we don't want to know.
No, I've got, I think, Aston Villa's away kit from 2013.
As you do. If this was a video podcast, our entire listenership would be green with envy.
Absolutely, or green with something anyway. But yeah, gentlemen, you were at the StoneX yesterday. We've got that to talk about. We've got a preview of a couple of big matches coming up next weekend with a final for Saracens women and also Saracens away at Bath, getting to the business end of the season. Obviously, we're going to talk about StoneX, but first up, I want to talk about Women's Six Nations because there's quite a lot of Saracens involvement in that. And yesterday we saw a fantastic spectacle at Twickenham with the England women racking up nearly 90 points against Ireland. And, you know, on the face of it, a bit of a mismatch, a bit of a... Well, I don't want to say a damp squib because England was so good yesterday. There's not a team in the world that could have, you know, they'd have put 30, 40 points on New Zealand yesterday. So, you know, everybody turned around and giving it, oh, it's disgraceful, it's embarrassment, it's rubbish, it was, you know, sport the occasion and everything. I don't think it did. Ireland were a little bit caught in the headlights, a little bit to start with, but they made England work, and England worked really well. And I mean, you know, Ellie Kildunn, we're looking at players outside of Saracens now. She's in purple form, but, you know, Jess Breach got a couple of tries. Marley Packer was back and doing her normal bits and pieces. Big shame to see Rosie Gallagher injured in warm-up and having to pull out with her arm in a sling on the sidelines. But, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on seeing a result that big, Matt?
To be honest, my first thought is thank God Ireland are much improved from their last couple of years of the Six Nations. Otherwise, we might have seen 100 points scored. Because actually, they've not looked too bad in this tournament. You thought, OK, England do need to watch out here. But yeah, like you said, you can only beat the team in front of you. It's not England's fault that they're so far ahead of all the other nations.
Yeah, well, we discussed that last week, didn't we, Matt? And in relation to Maggie Alfonso, I mean, for me, from the Ireland side, I saw enough there that does give you, you know, enthusiasm for the future. The young standoff, O'Brien, I mean, there was one moment where she sold, I think it was Ellie Kildunn, absolute, or it might have been Holly H. So I can't remember exactly who it was, but she sold the most outrageous dummy going, where she's put the ball out as if she's going to kick, then she's put it out as if she's going to, and then just brought it back and went for the gap. It was wonderful to see. And I think that's what it was. Ireland tried their damnedest. They just came up against a great England side, Duncan.
Yeah, I didn't see the game yesterday, so not for the first time in my life. I'm venturing an opinion on something from a position of complete ignorance. But we've talked about it before, that the English league is so strong and so far in advance of the other leagues. But I wonder whether there are parallels to be drawn with the Italian men's team. Because look how many, almost decades or generations is taken for Italy to get into a position of being competitive in the Six Nations. So is it just a question of time and it will come with those other nations, or is there something more proactive that needs to be done?
Well, I think the interesting thing is, and this
which all comes down to money at the end of the day, doesn't it? An investment in those leagues.
Well, absolutely. But the other thing is as well, I think this was a criticism when we were out walking the dogs this morning. Sharon, my wife, pointed it out that she's really into the women's rugby, which is great. You know, she's less into the men's rugby. She's really enjoying the women's rugby, which is sort of how it should be building fan base wise. But she said, you know, you go onto the forums and everything, and you see all the comments, and you know, we were discussing off there about the profusion of 50-something white males which basically we are. You know, we were between late 30s to early 60s white middle class blokes discussed about it, and it's those blokes that are going on.
Speak for yourself,
mate. You're honorary if nothing else. But you know, I mean, they're going on and they're the ones criticising it all and everything like that, and it annoys her because, you know, if you don't enjoy it, just don't get involved. There's enough people who were going along, and 50,000 people there. Teenage girls singing along with Sophie Ellis-Bextor, whatever. They were having a great time. The second thing is they're all turning around and saying, you know, oh, well, it's no wonder because England have got this league and they're all professional and everything. Scotland have improved this year. They've got an awful lot of players playing in the PWR. Wales haven't improved, but they've got an awful lot of players playing in the PWR. Ireland have got less players playing in the PWR, but you look at those players and you can see that they will potentially come over. And maybe the thing to do is to extend the PWR so that you include a couple of Irish sides, a couple of Welsh sides, a Scottish side maybe, and bring it into a British league, and that might build it up. I mean, we talked about it in doing it in the men's game. We don't think that'll ever happen because, as Duncan's often pointed out, that's turkeys voting for Christmas. But in the women's game, where they do seem to be a bit more, let's say, experimental in the way that they want to build the game, and they've got the remit almost to do that. Is that not a potential that, you know, we could do something like that, maybe? Anybody?
I think it is. You could imagine a system of pools, couldn't you? You could maybe have regional pools feeding through to some kind of playoff system. It could be very interesting. I mean, we've, by the way, 50 years old. I wish I was. You lot are kiddies. But it's very interesting going to the women's game. We were talking before how the demographic of those audiences are very different. Much younger, much more family orientated, much more female than the men's games. And I believe that there isn't a huge amount of crossover at the moment between people who go to women's games and people who go to men's games, which is interesting. But I think it underlines your point that, you know, people who follow are far more mature in terms of the age of the market men's games shouldn't really bring the same criteria to a sport which is really in its infancy. It's still a mixture of professional, semi-pro and amateur for a start, and there is a long way for it to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, the other game yesterday was obviously Scotland beat Italy. They're having a great tournament, which kind of like proves my point about you get players from Scotland coming into the PWR and playing at professionally and getting that training at club level, if nothing else. It improves the product up there. Wales, I don't know. I mean, I think Wales is systematic of a complete malaise in their game across the board, not just women's rugby. I mean, the Welsh Rugby Union is in a mess at the moment, and I think that's perhaps a lot to do with it. I don't think it's as bad as everybody thinks it is. But, you know, okay, let's be honest about it. This Six Nations is building up for the big one, Le Crunch, next week, or La Crunch if you're putting the feminine. I remember that from GCSE French, Duncan. I'm sure you're a lot better at the French language than me. But, I mean, yeah, it is building up for that. And also, you know, the other games as well. You've got, you know, Wales are going to be desperate to avoid a wooden spoon next week against Ireland, and Italy and Scotland could potentially be playing. Scotland are playing to keep that third place firm down, aren't they? So it's an interesting week next week, Matt.
It is, yeah, and I think that's what we've got to look at is, yes, England and potentially France up the top are a bit far away, but there's still big stories throughout. And yeah, you're definitely right about how Scotland have improved over the last few years, and Wales is a little bit of a shock because they, like you say, they've got plenty of PWR players. I think some of the issue there is that actually they're all playing together in the same team most of the time. There's a lot of players at Gloucester, for example. But yeah, it's a very, very good tournament. And I think certainly we've shown with the size of the attendances, and not just with England at Twickenham, really big crowds in Scotland as well, and France are doing all right too. So, only ways up really. And like I say, either back it or shut up. It's probably the best thing you can say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I think with the makeup of the audiences that I was talking about before, there are enough people there to back it. It's going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing about the people who do complain, it does give the opportunity for people like us to argue against those points that they make. But anyway, let's move on, shall we? We'll have a quick break there, and then we shall discuss the game at Stonex against the Cherry and Whites of Gloucester yesterday, and you can have your little whinge then, can't you?
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to part 2 of the Fezcast. And yeah, we're going to discuss, as we discussed last week, Matt, a big game at Stonex yesterday for Saracens. Start of the business end of the season. The end of the season, the part of the season, the Saracens are traditionally very good at, peaking at the right time, getting the results that are needed. And yesterday, we got the result that we needed. 46-24 was it against Gloucester, a bonus point win. That's all we really asked for as a bare minimum, was a bonus point win to keep us in that battle primarily for second place. Now, obviously, before we discuss the game, you were hoping that maybe Exeter Chiefs might have done us a favour in relation to Bath. They didn't. You can see the wheels coming off their season following their thumping against Toulouse in the European competition. That's one of those things. But you would have expected perhaps them to have got a win at home against Bath, but they didn't. So that makes next week's game, which we'll discuss at the end, a lot more important for us. But yeah, I mean, on the face of it, you look at the result, 46-24. I mean, we went into a lead. Tom Parton got a 20-minute hat-trick. Theo McFarlane did Theo McFarlane magic stuff in the air to score his try. And it looks like we won it a canter, with the only issue being, as you two will probably have a whinge about, and I'm going to let you go on this one now, the last 15 minutes where we managed to put 3 passes in to their winger to score a try.
I mean, start with the positives, really. You're right. We, especially once you saw the Gloucester team, you thought, well, the absolute bare minimum here is 5 points and just set yourself up for the last 3 games, which is exactly what happened. And some players coming into the team, the likes of Parton and Shegan, that looked really bright. Parton, probably scored the easiest hat-trick he'll ever score. But we were doing exactly what we needed to do. It was 22 zip at half-time, having played with the wind in our faces for the whole of it. And you thought, OK, this is... You play what's in front of you and you've got to take your opportunity and win by 50 points. And for 65 minutes, that looked like exactly what we were going to be doing. So, yeah, positives to take from that. We scored however many tries it was in the end, 6, 7, 8, I can't remember now. But, yeah, I'm not going to lay the blame on the fact that we made some substitutions and it started to go wrong from there, to be honest. But the only person really to pick out, unfortunately, and he's been a good player for us this season when he's needed, Gareth Simpson. The game management there was pretty appalling, to be honest. And a word actually for Aled Davis, who had his first game back in a long, long time, who I think managed the game from 9 perfectly, really, barring one box kick into the wind that went back over his head again. It just reeked of a team that knows it's winning and knows it can go on to a big win, and just started to try and do too much to get that big victory. And incredibly frustrating for those last 15 minutes. I mean, Duncan, I'm trying to do this without being too harsh, but it is pretty tricky, especially when we played in the red to try and score another try. Number one, we gave the ball away and gave away another try. But number two, it's led to probably a season-ending and pretty bad-looking injury to Ollie Hartley as well.
Yeah, I'll come back to that because you're absolutely right. I mean, and just to focus on the positives, as you say, barring the first 3 minutes, which were like the Keystone Cops, for 65 minutes, it was divine. I mean, you can pick out umpteen instances. That crossfield kick of Owen Farrell to Theo McFarland, I mean, as it was going across, and you could see Theo out on the wing with, was it the number 11? You're thinking, that's not fair. That's really not fair.
No contest
classic
whatsoever.
Piece of Theo McFarlane. Oh God, you could watch that all day, and loads of other wonderful passing and as you say, great performances across the field. And then I think the last 15 minutes it encapsulated a lot of this season, not just from us. Talking about the mental side of the game. What were we doing? I think their number 14 had borrowed Wonder Woman's invisible cape, hadn't he? Yeah, because he was just standing there. He was standing there.
Well, I'm going to ask.
Across.
I'm going to ask the question then, that the players that came on after seeing Saracens play for 65 minutes with accuracy, with invention, with joy de vivre, almost entertaining the crowd, did they come on and feel that they had to do the same? And because of the changes, it didn't help at all? Or was it just that they didn't get it right, Duncan?
No, I don't think. Matt said it. I thought Manu Vunipola was excellent. And just picking up again on his point, Ollie Hartley really looked good. I think he was instrumental in all of the tries after he came on. He looked big, he looked fast, and it was verging on the criminal that after the Hooter had gone, I think it was Nick Tompkins who played yet another long pass directly to their number 14, as opposed to just picking it off the field. And then you have that awful injury. He was down for, what was it, 10, possibly more than 10 minutes after the game ended, with a whole crowd of medics around him. And, eyewitnesses are saying that he was on gas as he was stretchered off. So that sounds like a broken leg, or at least a serious knee injury. What a shame. To add to Andy Christie, two young players really coming into a rich vein of form, and now they're, it's going to be a while till they're back. No, it was just a collective turning off, I think, and period of madness that we have seen at other periods in the season, not just from us.
The issue really is that in a game, I don't think this is arrogance. This is being realistic about the side that we were facing and the way that Gloucester were playing. Really, that should have been 60 odd points to nothing, and a big points difference that could be crucial come the end of the season. But instead, we've only won it by 20 odd. And you do just hope that doesn't come back to bite us, because it could be very, very tight, whether we're talking about a home semi-final or top 4. it could come down to points difference. And you look at games like that, and even playing 2 minutes into the red, just kick it out. Just take what we've got and go home, because you can score points another day.
There were nasty-looking injuries to Tom Parton, Juan Martin Gonzalez, which would be another one. If we lose him, that'd be bad. Although apparently he was walking around afterwards. Ollie Hartley's definitely. I would bet my mortgage on he's out. But I did think exactly the same, Matt. But I had a look at the league table this morning, and our points difference at something like 115 is way, way, way ahead everybody else. So hopefully that's not gonna be an issue. We're talking at 9:30 in the morning, and we've got Quins playing this afternoon, and that's going to be a crucial game.
Well, indeed,
we end up in the season.
Indeed, it is, gentlemen. I mean, and looking at the league table and looking at the games that are coming up, the interesting one, obviously, we've got Bath at the Rec on Friday night. Never a nice place to go, particularly not on a Friday night. I mean, it's horrible to get to if you're going as a spectator. You'll be down one corner, almost undoubtedly, despite it being nice and sunny at the moment, it'll be lashing it down with rain. It always does when it goes to Bath and everything. But that does become important for the simple reason that you then look at the rest of the games that are coming up. We got Sale at home, haven't we? And what's our other game as well as Bath? We've got
Bristol away.
So Bristol, who are coming into some good form, that's going to be a difficult. So 2 difficult trips down to the southwest, along with a home match against Sale. I mean, we're talking about winning one of those away matches, which we could do quite easily, but it's probably going to be targeted Bristol as opposed to Bath, but you'll target both of those games. The interesting thing is Bath's last game is away at Northampton, isn't it, where Northampton could have secured first place in the league. We could be going up against Bath for second place, and Northampton could be resting players because they got a semi-final the following week, couldn't they? And I mean, that's where you're right, Matt. That you need to be at full tilt these last 3 games now.
But to be honest, I think the game against Bath next week is, if we lose that, it's done. Bath are top 2 because we're the best in the world. Their game in the middle of it is Newcastle. I think Newcastle might have something to say over the last few games, but you've got to look at it as Bath having everything in their hands. All they'd really need to do is beat Newcastle in the penultimate game of the season, and they could be secure of top 2 as well. And their game against Northampton could potentially be a completely dead game, really. And our game against Sale wouldn't necessarily matter for a home semi-final, but it could be it for a top 2. So the most important thing for either us or Bath to do is win next week. Whoever wins that game is really in the driving seat for the rest of the season. So
I totally agree with that. But also to get that top 2 place, I think we may well need to win all 3 games, as you say. And there's a very, very possible scenario that we end up 4th, having to go away to Northampton in the semis, and that will be tough, to put it mildly.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it? Other than the fact that often what happens in these sort of situations, and you've seen it time and time again, that during the regular season, you play a team and you get beaten twice, like we have been by Northampton this year. And then it comes to the playoffs, and suddenly the team that's you looking at and think, well, they don't stand a chance of being thumped twice by that team, actually do win. So, as we often said, knockout games, you have a puncher's chance, don't you? And that's what we'll be looking at perhaps for this one. Shall we just have a quick finish there, and then we'll have a quick chat about the women's final that's coming up.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterberry here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Okay, well, welcome back to the last part of the Fezcast this week with me and Duncan and Matt. And we just need to have a quick look ahead to next weekend because there is a final down in Bristol. And we discussed the whys and wherefores of why it's in Bristol, And again, another, like we were talking about, Saracens allowing Gloucester to come back into the game this weekend, us allowing Exeter come back into the game has kind of bit them on the backside. But going down to Bristol for a final, first chance of silverware this season, something to look forward to, Matt.
It is, yeah. So yeah, it's on Sunday the 28th. Unfortunately, I'm doing other bits, so I can't get down there. But yeah, Exeter have had a bit of a monopoly on this cup for a little while, so it's very nice for us to have beaten them in the semi-finals, and us versus Bristol is probably going to be quite a good game here. Bristol, I think they beat Gloucester something like 50 odd, 30 odd. So if we'd have held on to our fairly big lead against Exeter, it would have been a home final for us, because it was just all based on who had the biggest victory in the semis. So yeah, bit of a shame we're having to travel, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. But we haven't done too badly in Bristol in the past. But yeah, obviously we'll probably do as we have done right the way through this cup tournament as well. We'll be sending a team that has got some of our younger players, some of our players slightly deeper in the squad, particularly with the Six Nations on. But there'll be a smattering of experience in there as well, and yeah, it should be quite a good final, really.
Oh, well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, looking forward to it, to seeing how it goes. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think both Bristol and Saracens, but almost not by accident, but by design almost, actually, when you think about it, because of the amount of internationals those teams now supply, that both teams have had to, blend some experience. And like you had Sonic on last week with your interview, which was excellent, Matt. But, experienced players like Sonic coming in and younger players coming through that have been blooded, that you could see the future of both clubs is in the right place, which perhaps is not what, without wishing to criticise Exeter, because that's up to what they do, because they've had lots of like Canadians and American internationals in their squad over the years. They've been able to go a bit more full strength on the cup, because that's how they've done it. I mean, that's up to them. It's great to see that this cup, the two finalists have been using it in the right way, Duncan.
Yes, and I think it's a good idea to make the final at one of the participants' grounds. It ensures a big crowd. And I understand Bristol have given tickets away free to all of their men's season ticket holders. So it's going to be a very one-sided crowd, that's for sure. But it's going to be a great challenge. And yeah, I think the right two teams are there, based on their culture, what they've done for the game in bringing players through, whereas other teams have recruited more internationally outside the Six Nations. So it's good to see Bristol and Sarries there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all to look forward to, along with obviously Bath away on Friday night, and the culmination of the Women's Six Nations. Lots of rugby next weekend, Matt, to enjoy for us to talk about on the following Wednesday's show, which will be going out on the what date would that be going out on? Something or other. When will that be going out on the 1st of May? By me, right into the business end of the season, shall we say?
Yeah, that's coming around pretty quick. That does mean I'm going on holiday soon, though. So yeah.
or as we prefer to call it, deserting me and Duncan to the joys of trying to edit this together as professionally as you do, Matt.
Yes, I mean I haven't got a great history of knockout rugby attendance. Normally when I'm there we lose, so I'm going to disappear off on holiday for the business end of the season. So that means we're going to be double Premiership champions.
Absolutely.
It's interesting you say that. I had a friend, Tom, who came yesterday, and his previous attendance was at the Showdown. So every time he turns up, we're brilliant. So I'm going to make sure he comes to all the rest of the games.
Well, I assume he left early yesterday then to catch a train back or something, did he?
No, I can't blame him for that last 15 minutes.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. And as I say, thank you, everybody, for listening in to the Fedscast again. And as I say, we'll be back next week on the 1st of May, next Wednesday. And hopefully we'll have some news about what will be coming up the following week, which could be quite good. All depends on everything that goes together this week. But thank you, everybody, for listening.
Or it could be average. You never know.
Yeah, you never know, yeah. One of the two, isn't it? Take your pick. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for listening in. And we'll speak to you again next week on the Fedscast.
This is the Fezcast.